Welcome to Sensible Health Solutions, the show where we simplify health and wellness. Join your hosts, Hallie Fields and Dr. Scott Luper, as they share practical tips and expert insight to help you navigate common ailments, nutrition, and overall well-being. Tune in for straightforward advice that empowers you to live a healthier life.
Hello, Dr. Luper.
Hello, Hallie.
Well, we started off with talking about longevity this month. And our last episode, we touched on how to live longer, different areas in these blue zones that have longer lifespans. What do you think is another key piece in living longer?
So, I think looking at people's metabolism and keeping metabolism running efficiently and clean, that's key. And we did talk about that in kind of a roundabout way, because we talked about people needing to eat good food, to do exercise, to be able to have their cleaning systems up-regulated. And really what we were talking about all the time was metabolism.
Okay, so can we just very broadly define metabolism?
Yeah, it's not what metabolism is. Basically you burning calories and making heat. That's metabolism.
Okay.
But that's not what I'm talking about. In the biggest sense I am, but in a much more specific sense, I'm talking about mitochondria.
Right, and cellular function.
So our cells do stuff. They make enzymes, they make hormones, they pull on things, and they do stuff. They have tasks. And in order to do these tasks, we need energy. In order to capture the energy and move it from place to place, what we use is a molecule called ATP. And ATP has a phosphorus or phosphate that is attached like a spring. It's basically screwed on under pressure. And so it acts like a little spring. So you could move this little device to an area, hook it in, and it goes boing, and it runs a thing. It'll take a salt ion and run it across a membrane. Or it'll attach an amino acid to a protein. Or it'll do anything the cell needs to do. Any kind of thing that needs energy, it runs off these ATPs. And once it gets sprung, you got the ADP, because when you only got two of them, it's got a D here. But the third one is still hanging around. So you basically take it and you screw it back on, and now it's under pressure again. So that screwing process takes place in the mitochondria. The mitochondria make the little energy devices that run our cells. Now, mitochondria are interesting because the understanding is they used to be independent. They were their own organism. There were these cells
that are inside of cells.
And what happened? The story. Let me keep the story simple. Back way long ago, big cells ate little cells, but they didn't digest them.
So they were just floating around.
They just kept them.
Yeah.
And instead of not digesting them, they fed them and kept them as pets.
Okay.
And then the little organisms did what they normally had to do. They made stuff. They have to make energy for themselves. So they just cranked out a bunch of ATP, and now it's this fabulous symbiotic relationship because the big cells can make 20 times more energy based on keeping these little cells. They're like bacteria.
Yeah. That's what I'm kind of envisioning in my mind. Now, in school, I learned all about the cell and can't really recall much of it other than mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. That's it. So what else? What does that mean? What is it responsible for?
Well, the mitochondria has got its own DNA. They replicate as if they were some kind of bacteria. So they're not exactly bacteria because they can't really live on their own. They've grown accustomed over the billions of years of living inside regular cells. But what they do is they have the ability to run electrons down this channel and then use the energy from the gradient, high gradient on one side, low on the other, and shoot them through and use that energy to generate ATP.
Okay.
So there it is. So that's what they do. They have this membrane. They keep stuff on one side, and then they pile it up, and then they shoot it through, and then you get ATP production on the other side. Now the problem is these little channels are like little tubes. They can get clogged up, and then they don't work. And some things act as a poison because they block these little channels. Cyanide, for example. Cyanide kills us because it blocks our energy production. We starve to death under the influence of cyanide. Okay? So that's not the only thing. There's all kinds of stuff in the world that we get exposed to that can break these channels down, and not have them work right.
So is it in the lengthening of these channels or the opening of these channels, or
to be able to fix them or break them?
To be able to enhance them and live longer.
So it's to make new ones.
Okay.
That's what it is. The old ones get tired, they get clogged, they get broken, and so you need to make a new one. And so there's zillions of these things inside each and every mitochondria, and so the mitochondria, runs as long as it can until it just gets old and broken down, and then eventually gets digested and used up. But meanwhile, one of the other healthy mitochondria divided and made a new mitochondria. And so they come up with this balance of the appropriate amount of mitochondria inside the cells when people are healthy. Now, it takes energy to do this. Also, you have to balance the destruction to the creation. And so if something comes along and poisons the mitochondria, that's it, we're dead, right? Unless you figure out some kind of workaround. Or if something slows down the ability of the mitochondria to reproduce, then you're not dead, you're just tired.
You're suffering,
You're tired and you're cold. Okay, so if people are tired and cold...
You're tired and you're cold.
And you're cold.
So if you heat yourself up, are you heating up mitochondria function?
You're heating up your body to function better because the enzymes tend to function better at the appropriate temperature. The heating people up doesn't really tend to help very much, though. I'll come back to that.
Okay.
So we're trying to figure out how to fix somebody's metabolism. So really what happens is metabolism, the mitochondria, let's be specific, mitochondria get poisoned.
Yes.
That's the breakdown.
Okay.
So how do we get the mitochondria to be healthy again? What we need to do is get the cell to be healthy again because the mitochondria live inside the cell. That's the key thing. We get the cell healthy, we have a better chance of recouping our mitochondrial function. Now, there's a side conversation we need to have because most people, when you think of your metabolic rate, you think of your thyroid. And you think, well, my thyroid must be low. Because if your thyroid gets low, you get cold, you get slow, you get tired, your metabolic rate goes down. I mean, measurably.
Well, when I think about metabolic rate, I think about digestion, mostly.
Yeah, well, your digestion is an important part of that as well. Right. Because the metabolism doesn't run unless you got fuel to throw in to burn up. Okay. So the thing about thyroid, though, is people think, well, I can speed my metabolism up if I take thyroid. That's true to a point. If the mitochondria are intact and healthy, they can be stimulated to be able to perform more, to burn more stuff, to generate more ATP. They can. But if they're sick and tired and unhealthy and those electron transport chain is broken, then they can't. So the thyroid is analogous to the thermostat on the wall of your house. You want to heat the house up, you turn the thermostat up. You want to heat your body up, you turn your thyroid up. That's assuming the boiler's running.
Yeah.
If the boiler's broken or the boiler's, coughing black smoke, you turn it up, you just get nothing. You get crap. You get more smoke.
Yeah.
And so it's a bad idea. I've had this happen with patients who weren't well enough for me to turn their thyroid up. I ran the test and found out the thyroid was running low. And I thought, oh, yay, let's increase your thyroid. I had them start taking thyroid, and they got sick. Their systems couldn't handle it.
Wasn't doing it.
Yeah, it turns out the thermostat wasn't broken. The boiler was broken.
It was the boiler.
The boiler
Yep.
is a mitochondria.
Yep.
There
I'm following. Okay.
So we want to fix the mitochondria.
Okay. So how would increasing temperature fix the mitochondria? Because what I've heard is, living in a cooler environment stimulates your metabolism to burn more because you're burning more calories to stay warmer.
Yes.
So you want to decrease temperature to increase metabolic rate?
Yeah, decreased temperature is not quite the right way to say it. What we want to do is we want to stimulate the metabolism. Now, this is assuming that the mitochondria are running fine. I can come back and talk about how to fix broken mitochondria, but we're just assuming they're running fine.
Okay.
They just need to be stimulated. So what's the best way to warm up? You think, easy. We're just going to get in a sauna. We're going to get in a hot tub, and we're just going to warm up. We're just going to soak in heat. And you will. You'll actually get warm. Your temperature will go up. Except for as soon as you get out of that sauna
it'll
or
go
out
back
of that
down.
hot tub, no, it'll go back down and further.
Oh.
And further. Because your body can relax. It doesn't need to make heat. It's just soaking it up from the environment.
And it just lost all the outside environment's heat that it was using.
So I lived in Arizona for 3 years. I taught at the naturopathic college down in Tempe. And it was routinely 105 in the summertime. You know, it get up to 115 from time to time. But, you know, around 105 was kind of the normal temperature. And so I didn't need to make any heat. I just had to go soak it up from the environment.
Yeah.
I kind of became like a lizard. And my metabolism got really relaxed.
Okay.
I didn't need to eat much.
Okay.
I lived on salads and fruit and was perfectly happy eating salads and fruit.
Right.
And whenever I got a little, you know, chilly or whatever, I just go outside and just soak up the heat because it was abundant.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah, you couldn't get away from it.
Yeah, it was an interesting place to live. And so my metabolism got very relaxed. It took me 3 weeks to adjust. Because I noticed when I came in, I was hot all the time. 3 weeks later, I had adjusted, my metabolism had shifted. And that's about right. That's about how long it takes to adjust to a new place. It's about 3 weeks. Okay? Mm-hmm. So, let's do the opposite. Let's not live in Arizona. Let's live in Fairbanks, Alaska.
I would say it takes a little bit more than 3 weeks to adjust.
No, really, it's about 3 weeks.
Okay.
Seriously. I mean, you know, you get used to the idiosyncrasies of the life here, right? There's that. But in terms of your metabolism, no, 3 weeks is about right.
Okay.
So what you do is you get exposed to cold.
Yeah.
I use it with my hands. Here's your temperature. Here's where we want it, right? So you think, I'm going to bring it up. There, and then you let go. This is hot tub, and then you comes back down. Bad idea. So here's where your temperature is. Here's where we want it. You push it down. Now, there's a thing called homeostasis. Your body doesn't want to be down, so it fights back up, and then you overcompensate. And now you're warmer because you got cold. This is a thing. Mm-hmm. This is something that's being done, you know, a lot.
Yeah, there's saunas, there's cold plunges.
Well, the sauna with the cold plunge
the
afterwards.
cold, yeah,
That's
exactly.
the trick. It's not the sauna, it's a cold plunge. Where the people buy bags of ice and they throw it in the bathtub and fill it up full of water, stir the ice around and then slide in. Mm-hmm. Well, that's fabulous.
Kind of like a cold. That is a cold plunge.
That is a cold plunge, right?
Yeah.
The other thing is where you go out in the wintertime, you go to that little pond near your house, and then you chip a hole in the
polar plunge, like the Navy SEALs or the.
They drill a hole down and then they saw, either with a chainsaw or a saw, and they saw a square out of the ice and then dive in.
I still have yet to do that. I've lived in Fairbanks, Alaska 30 years, haven't done that one
I
yet.
haven't sawed a hole in the ice, but I have many times jumped into, 30-degree water,
Well, I've
36,
done
37.
that. Like, I've jumped into Alaskan glacial water.
That counts, by the way.
Okay, that counts. Okay. I can mark that off my bucket list.
Yeah, so what that does is it stimulates your body to warm up, to maintain your homeostasis. And as
produce more mitochondria?
And yes, your mitochondrial production will go up.
Okay.
Yep, but mostly what they do is they'll burn more, and they run at a higher rate, a higher metabolic rate. But given that stimulation for long enough, you'll literally create more mitochondria, so they can keep up, so they can burn more. And now you have to feed them more. That's one of the reasons why we do so well with high-calorie foods. You realize more ice cream is eaten per capita in Alaska than any other state in the Union. You think, ice cream, come on, they're all freezing up in Alaska. No, we need the calories.
We need it.
We need the calories.
We need all the ice cream.
And so we do a lot more oily things, a lot more creamy things, a lot more fatty things, a lot more high-calorie things, and we burn them because our body's designed to burn calories to maintain our heat. Mm-hmm. Particularly if we're doing a lot of work outside. If you're inside all the time, not so much. Mm-hmm. If you're outside, plenty.
Yeah.
Okay?
Absolutely.
So one of the best ways to get your metabolism to run well, assuming that it's intact, is to stimulate it with cold. That turns out to be the number one thing. And you don't necessarily have to do a polar plunge and cut a hole in the the lake. Oh, well, you can just get in your shower and then just flip it over to cold when you're at the end of your shower and get plenty of stimulation from the cold.
Right. I turn my heat off. But we're now, like, warm enough to turn our heat off. That's not suggestible in the winter, but...
It's interesting. We did too.
Yeah.
It was 39 degrees today outside, and we have no heat.
Yeah. I turned my heat off
because we're used to it.
Yeah.
We like things to be cooler.
Yeah.
It stimulates our body to make heat.
You know what
I feel better.
Found after? Yeah. No, I have been sleeping probably in a 70-degree basement for a year now, and I turned my heat off a couple months ago. I like it cold. I like it cold in my basement, and I never knew that until recently.
Yeah, so I learned that years ago.
Okay, well, I'm just
and I
finding
love
out.
it. I love that cold feeling. I need a cold room.
Yeah, cold room, great.
And so with people from the Southlands come visit and they go, how do you live this way? It's 64 degrees in your house. And I go, what? This is great.
Yeah, put on a sweatshirt.
You should go outside.
Yeah, where all the mosquitoes are.
Okay, let's go back and talk about things that can poison your metabolism. So there's lots of toxins and lots of things that can poison your metabolism. And that's one of the reasons why organisms make these poisons, is to weaken the competition.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I have to do when somebody comes in when they're cold and they're slow and their metabolic rate is clearly low is I need to do tests. Now the thyroid test is an obvious test. We always run it. But it's oftentimes, I won't say mostly, but often, it's not the problem. It turns out to be something else is with the problem. And so what we'll do is we'll run tests to be able to figure this out. Let me give you some examples. Toxic metals can get in the way of your metabolic rate. If you get toxic metals in your body, arsenic and cadmium and mercury and things like that, it poisons your metabolism, and you run cold and slow, and you're not as good. So one of the things we need to do is get those out of people. We have to stimulate them enough to get the detox. That's a whole nother show. Let me just say, you need to clean the metals out of them. Okay, here's another one. We were test for mold toxins. Mm-hmm. Mold toxins will do the same thing. They're not the same as heavy metals. They don't work the same as heavy metals. They don't poison the same as heavy metals. But nonetheless, they get in the way of your metabolism through different mechanisms, but nonetheless, it is a metabolism breakdown. So you need to get the toxins out of people. And you can. Once you do, you got a chance of getting people's metabolic rate to go up. We do this all the time. I think lots of patients that we've done this with had them come back and they're feeling great. Their energy's back. Their life is back.
Warmer,
they're feeling fabulous. They're warmer. Mm-hmm. Everything's great, right? Again, that's another whole show.
Yeah. So we have a mold exposure show and a heavy metals
show. We could do that. How to get heavy metals out of your body. What do you do? How to get mold exposed? How do you do?
I'm taking notes.
Let's talk about another thing, because this one's new to me, and that's methylene blue.
Yeah.
Methylene blue is a dye that's used to dye things blue. I mean, you could dye a shirt. A white shirt will turn blue under the influence of methylene blue. It's absolutely artificial. It was created back in the 1800s as a way to dye things. And I don't know exactly how this got figured out, but it was discovered that methylene blue was helpful for certain diseases. Malaria being one of those diseases. Malaria is when these little organisms live inside our red blood cells.
Right,
as a way of hiding from our immune system.
So then how does the methylene blue find them inside of the red blood cell? And then how does the methylene blue go into the cell to promote mitochondrial function? Yeah.
So the malaria part, it wasn't particularly good at fighting malaria. Mm-hmm. And it turns out the basic thing is it's able to penetrate the red blood cell, and the little organisms don't like it. They don't like the taste of it. They don't like the effect of it. And so they tend not to hang out or die, right? So there's that. The methylene blue, it was discovered later that the methylene blue was helpful to restore the oxidative phosphorylation electron transport chain process inside of cells. Also was helpful at helping helping the hemoglobin function correctly. Now, hemoglobin is a molecule in our blood, inside the red blood cells, that carries oxygen. Mm-hmm. It has a little atom of iron in the center of the molecule, and the oxygen jumps on the iron, and it carries it to where it needs to go, and then the oxygen jumps back off. But the oxygen doesn't always jump back off. Depends on what form it is. I'll give you an example. Carbon monoxide, the oxygen in carbon monoxide attaches much more firmly to the iron and hemoglobin, basically spoiling it. So it won't come loose. And so the methylene blue has the ability to move electrons around. It's just got a knack for it. And so it can bypass the block in the mitochondria, and it can also do a workaround with the poisoned hemoglobin. So I'm using a lot of words. Let me keep it simple. If you get poisoned with cyanide or with carbon monoxide or a variety of different poisons, mushrooms, other things, and you go to the emergency room and they recognize what poisoned you, if it's the right poison, what they'll do is they'll give you a big dose of methylene blue. And a 350 milligram IV dose, they'll drip it into your bloodstream over an hour, hour and a half, somewhere like that, to save your life. And it works. And it'll actually save your life. So if you somehow got a cyanide poisoning and you got methylene blue quick enough, you wouldn't die. Okay?
Okay.
So it's a real useful trick. Now what it does is the ATP creating mechanisms inside the mitochondria become doped. That is, they get blocked up. The tubes get jammed up. They don't work right. And the methylene blue can bridge the mitochondrial membrane and move the electrons across that membrane and provide a workaround. Now
it doesn't clear the channel, but it just
no, it does not clear the channel. What it does, it provides a workaround. Now, it's not as efficient.
And then how do you clear the channel?
You grow a new channel.
Okay. So it's just kind of like a...
The mitochondria has to stay alive and then repair itself.
Okay.
The cell has to stay alive and repair itself.
Okay.
So there's this team, mitochondria and cells working together in happy harmony. They got to keep on living, and then they can go through the process of repairing and replacing.
So I'm wondering if the methylene blue is something that you continuously take for metabolic, enhancement, or it's something that you will take on a certain regimen, like maybe for 3 weeks and then 2 weeks off, or 4 weeks and then a week off, or...
Okay, that's an excellent question. So the methylene blue, let's be clear about this, is not a metabolic enhancement.
Okay.
It is worse than a real metabolism. Your body's ability to make ATP is better with the system that it has already, not methylene blue.
Okay.
Okay? But if the system it has already is broken, methylene blue is better than nothing. It'll work. So there's a word for this. This is a crutch.
Yeah, it's a little Band-Aid.
What you sprain your ankle and now you're hopping around on one foot. You're not really getting around well, hop, 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 right? But they invented this thing called a crutch. You put it under your armpit and you go along, and suddenly you're way better than you were before. Now you're not ready to run a race.
Obviously, yeah.
But you can get around better than you did before. That's methylene blue.
Okay.
So if you need it, it's a lifesaver. But if you're tip-top already,
yeah, if you're already
it gets in the way.
Oh, really?
Yes, it does.
So we've been doing a lot of work with it in the clinic, and I've been considering, maybe I should incorporate this into my supplement regimen.
Are you toxic?
A little bit. Some gut infection, some...
Then it could.
Okay.
That could be a thing that's helpful.
Okay.
And if you're not toxic and you're doing okay, really the question is, for the first part of the show, we talked about, do you have heavy metals?
Right.
Do you have mold spores in your system?
Right,
do you have mold toxins, right? What do you have? What is something that's poisoning you? You huffing carbon monoxide at night?
No.
Because if you are, methylene blue is the trick. It's the answer for you. It'll help you.
Okay.
If you're not, not so much.
So then how long, if people are to need this crutch, then how long are they intended to take it, and how much? And
it matters how quick it takes for your body to heal. So actually, let's talk about amount. First of all, I can't answer your question because I don't know. Because everybody's different.
Yeah.
So we run it for a while and then say, how do you feel? I feel great. Excellent. You're off methylene blue.
Okay, then what about the amount? You were talking about the high dosage.
Good question. That's an excellent question. So high doses are not a good idea because high doses will take over the system.
Will they turn you blue?
And they'll turn you blue.
Will it really?
Yeah.
Really?
For real.
Like a little Smurf?
Yep.
Like blue.
Blue.
Like blue man blue.
Yeah, like, I don't know.
Not just like a hue of blue.
Yeah, blue. You turn blue. Blue. Real blue. Honestly blue.
Violet, you're turning violet.
Yeah, like that. You turn blue. Yeah, it'll absolutely turn you blue. So the dosage needs to be small. The doses that I'm recommending right now are between 10 and 15 milligrams twice a day. A normal dose in an emergency room lifesaver is around 350 milligrams.
10 and 15 milligrams a day, is that liquid or
twice a day.
Capsules?
Yes.
Both?
It is.
Okay.
Liquid or capsules. Mostly it's sold as a 1% solution, though we've been carrying a 2% solution so you can get by with less drops. And also the capsules. The capsules we're using at the clinic right now have 12 milligrams per capsule, so it's 1 cap twice a day. So you could work out the dosage. It's the 2% solution. It's 1 milligram per drop, and so it's 10 drops twice a day. The 1% solution is half a milligram per drop, so it's 20 drops twice a day to get to a low dose, which is really the dose we're looking for. We don't want to poison anybody. I mean, that's not that it's poison because it's the antidote for poison. But we don't want to create an inefficiency. What we want to do is put a little bit in there so it can do a workaround. If you need a little bit of workaround, it depends on how sick you are. If you're really sick, like we had some patients that really are sick, and they're having a real hard time generating heat and a real hard time generating energy, and they're basically tired. This is chronic fatigue. We know why. We're in the process of getting them better. We want to speed that process up. They need a crutch, right? They need a crutch. So we have a crutch. There's a crutch that we can use to help them. And then when they're all healed up, they don't need the crutch anymore. How do we know when they're healed up? Because we can tell by what they say.
Right.
We can tell by what the labs look like.
Yeah, the labs and their actual appearance, how they interact with us. They're not running slow anymore. They're more engaged.
Yeah, like that. Mm-hmm. So this is methylene blue is not the only thing we can do to help people's metabolism. There's some stuff that's been around forever. I remember being a kid and hearing about these things. Let me give you a couple examples. One of those things is B vitamins.
Oh.
B vitamins give you energy.
Yep.
They do. They really do. Now, how could they give you energy? They're vitamins. What are they doing? They act as cofactors in our metabolism. So the way their metabolism works, it works better with certain kinds of B vitamins. B3, for example, helps the mitochondria work better.
B12?
B12 acts as an anti-inflammatory.
B6?
So there's a bunch of stuff we can do to help keep things running. There's other reasons for B vitamins to be helpful. B5, for example, is helpful for your adrenal glands to make adrenal hormones, which gives us our get up and go. So it's not one thing. It's a series of things. It's cofactors for our metabolism. It's cofactors for hormone production. It's cofactors for, the regulation of how our body uses energy and burns energy and does those kinds of things. The bottom line, though, is B vitamins tend to be helpful for energy for a variety of reasons. So does magnesium.
Magnesium, yep. Magnesium is good for rest also.
It's relaxing.
Yeah.
So magnesium is the number one most deficient mineral in the American society.
In our diet and everything?
Yeah. So the way we live as Americans tends to leave us deficient in magnesium. So if we take magnesium, we tend to feel better. Yeah. Our energy's better. Mm-hmm. Our resilience is better.
My sleep is better, and that's how I, correlate it to my energy being better the next day is because I actually slept, I got good rest. I was able to wind down. I think that we are over time for this episode.
Okay, well, we're going to let it go right there. So, yeah, interesting topic, isn't it?
Very interesting. I think we should do another episode on longevity next time.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Haley.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Sensible Health Solutions. We hope you found today's discussion enlightening and packed with practical tips to enhance your wellness journey. Remember, small changes can lead to big results. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us bring you the best content possible. Stay connected with us on social media for more health insights and updates. You can find us at Sensible Health Solutions across all social platforms. Until next time, stay sensible and stay healthy. This content is for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Seek medical advice from a healthcare professional for any medical conditions.